mentioned. Unfortunately, all four of you on the panel with me today have personal experience of domestic abuse. But Sophie, we were looking at the stats, and there are some shocking stats when it comes to people with disabilities and how often they have to deal with instances of domestic abuse. And they're nearly 3 times more likely to experience domestic abuse.
Yeah, it's shocking. But well, when I first heard that, I was shocked too. And then you start to unpack it and try to understand it. And you can understand quite quickly how easily abuse can take different forms with disabled women. So, for example, if you're somebody who has a PA or somebody who administers your medication or someone who supports you, maybe drives you, or maybe you can't actually even get out of bed without somebody's support. If that person is the abuser, how do you get yourself out of that situation? And then, furthermore, if you can't access some of the services that you need to be able to get support, say you're a wheelchair user and you can't get into a refuge because they're not accessible, or say you're deaf and you can't get in.
I mean, when you mentioned that this morning, we all found that shocking because you did a documentary about this, didn't you? And at that point, when you looked at the stats and you looked at those refuges available in London, only one refuge in London was accessible.
One refuge was accessible, and still also there's very little funding going into it. There's very little understanding of the complexities and how they manifest, like how they show up, and so people don't know how to spot it. There's a lot going on in this, and it's not easy to just point the finger and blame one particular... It's not just that the services aren't accessible, it's perhaps that even disabled people themselves might not necessarily realise that it is abusive. And that's certainly what happened for me.
You didn't realise
I didn't quite realise
some time afterwards.
Exactly. So what happened with me is I've been in a couple of relationships where things had taken a turn for the worse. And one particular relationship, there was often instances where the abuse would take this form of, it's hard to explain it, but things like they would take my wheelchair away from me when we'd have a row, or they'd put things out of reach, or I'd get left places, which, as I can't walk, like, I can't tell you what that feels like to have your control taken away from you in that way.
When you say left places, just...
Like left on a sofa in a place and the chair taken away, or left outside in a space and the chair taken away, or I was left in the car and I couldn't get out of the car. Things like that. And it wasn't until I made the documentary and started talking about that somebody said, well, you know, that's abuse. And I was like, well, yeah, and now you say it. And that word was very laden for me. I didn't see myself as a victim. I don't like to see myself as a victim.
Was the person who did that to you, who left you in the car and just kind of disappeared, did they laugh about it afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, it was always this sort of like...
Yeah.
I think this is another part of abuse, is that sense of, like, it gets normalised within a relationship, and it's sort of like and there was an element of, like, that it was never seen by them, you know, as something that was then considered by me abuse. And that also then took other forms, again, with my disability, like financial control and coercive control and all of these other insidious types of abuse. But, yeah, for me, it was a bit of an awakening. I was like, oh, that happened to me too. I wonder who else it's happening to. And I feel very strongly about sitting here as a disabled woman trying to represent, because I think so often we get left out of this conversation. And I also think that a lot of women don't quite know that they're in it and how to spot it and what to do. And a lot more needs to be done to support women out of that situation.
So these situations, especially where your chair was being taken away and you're just being left in places, did you ever tell anybody that, friends or family?
No, I had the same old thing that we all talk about, which is I got very isolated. So the person I was with had managed successfully to sort of remove a lot of the relationships in my life. And I know I'm not alone in that. That seems to be a pattern of success when it comes to abusive relationships and control, is let's take that individual and somehow alienate them from all of the people that love them and care. So some of my best friends did spot the signs, tried to say stuff, but then I quickly got, you know, turned against them, and that was part of it all. So I lost friends, so I didn't really talk about it, and I didn't really want to talk about it because it was embarrassing, and I felt that sense of, how can I... And I still get this. It's a really hard thing to unpack, is people look at someone like me and they'll say, yeah, how did that happen to you? And that line, how did you let that happen? Surely you're...
Are you still blaming yourself?
I think, hell yeah. How did I let that person in? How did I do that? Do you know, I think that's... I don't think, again, I'm alone in that. I think that's a rational... When you're somebody who... I don't know, has taken control of your circumstances the best you can, like I have in my life, and then this happens, I'm like, how did that happen? How did I not stop it? And yes, OK, I know takes two to tango, of course, but I still have that sense of, like, how did I get into that situation?
But the secret is that the person who was doing it to you said they cared for you so much at the same time.
So you had the same thing?
Yeah. They really, really care about you. And what you're talking about is as if you're talking one language and they're talking another.
Yeah.
So you might have said, you left me in the car. Yeah. What are you talking about? And what?
And what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your point is...
Yeah, totally.
So
Go on.
how did you get out of that?
Oh, eventually they left. So I didn't even do it myself. They left.
But how do you feel now, having looked?
Now I've made a documentary about it, and I am very. You can hear it in my voice. I'm like, I'm good. I'm cool. It's okay. I'm all right. I'm now out here to try and talk about it, and I want people to understand about it. Not what happened to me. That's not what's happening to women like me.
Yeah.
And I was enraged by how little people understood it in the services where women are meant to be getting support, and what more money needs to come into these resources. You know, that it's deeply underfunded, and that needs to change. So I feel that now I turn my abuse and turn any trauma into something to fight with. You know what I mean? So I feel that sense of,
And well done for not just swearing.
Really came out.
It did really come out.
Sorry, everybody.